Say you're my wife." Lena Hayes froze, her breath catching, as Rowan Cole's hand closed around her wrist, firm, desperate, inescapable. The entire ballroom watched. Seconds earlier, she'd been nothing. A stranger. A drifter with empty pockets and nowhere left to run. Now this man, this cold, untouchable rancher everyone feared, was pulling her against his chest. His voice dropping to a whisper that cut through every rule she'd ever known. "One word. That's all I need. Say it." His eyes burned with something she couldn't name. The crowd pressed closer. Her heart hammered against her ribs. And before she could think, before she could breathe, his lips brushed across her knuckles, and he turned to face them all, announcing what couldn't possibly be true. Before we go further into this story, please subscribe to our channel and stay with us until the very end. Comment below with the city you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story travels. Now, let's continue. Lena's fingers were still trembling when Rowan released her hand. The ballroom erupted in polite applause, but underneath the civilized clapping she heard the whispers starting sharp, curious, vicious. She'd walked into Black Ridge Valley 3 hours ago with nothing but a worn satchel and the last of her pride, and now she stood in the center of the Coulter Estate ballroom, wearing a borrowed dress that didn't fit being claimed as a wife by a man whose name she'd only heard in warnings. "Smile," Rowan murmured against her ear, his hand settling at the small of her back with practiced ease. "They're watching." She smiled. Her face felt like cracked porcelain. "Rowan Cole, you devil!" A broad-shouldered man with silver hair pushed through the crowd, his grin too wide, his eyes too sharp. "Married? When did this happen?" "Recently," Rowan said, his voice carrying that same flat coldness Lena had heard when he'd first grabbed her arm in the hallway. "We've kept it quiet." "I can see why." The man's gaze raked over Lena, assessing, dismissing. "She's not exactly what I'd call your type." Rowan's hand tightened against her back, a warning, or maybe a threat. "Careful, Morrison." "Just surprised is all." Morrison's smile sharpened. "You swore you'd never marry. Something about trust being a fool's game after what Eleanor did to you." The name landed like a slap. Lena felt Rowan go rigid beside her, felt something cold and furious ripple through him, even though his expression never changed. "Eleanor's in the past," Rowan said quietly. "My wife is my future." Wife. The word sat wrong in Lena's mouth, heavy and foreign. 20 minutes ago she'd been standing in the servants' entrance, begging the housekeeper for work. Any work, scrubbing floors, mucking stables, anything to earn enough to send home. Her mother's letters had become desperate. The bank was taking the house. Her sister needed medicine. Lena had traveled 600 miles on the promise of work that turned out to be a lie. And now she had $3 left and nowhere to sleep tonight. Then the housekeeper had looked her up and down with disdain and said there was nothing. But maybe if Lena cleaned herself up, she could serve drinks at the gathering. Just for tonight. Cash under the table. Lena had taken it. Pride was expensive, and she'd run out of money for it weeks ago. She'd been carrying a tray of champagne when she'd stumbled, literally stumbled over her own exhausted feet, and nearly crashed into a woman dripping with diamonds and contempt. "Clumsy little thing," the woman had said loud enough for half the room to hear. "Where did they find you, the gutter?" Lena had tried to apologize, tried to back away, but the woman had grabbed her arm, her nails digging in, and that's when Lena had made her mistake. She'd pulled back, hard. The champagne had gone flying. The woman had shrieked, and suddenly security was coming. And the housekeeper was pointing at Lena with fury in her eyes, and everything was collapsing again like it always did, like it had been collapsing for months. Then Rowan Cole had been there, stepping between her and the guards, his hand closing around her wrist, his voice cutting through the chaos with 6 impossible words. "She's with me. My wife." Now Morrison was still talking, circling them like a predator sensing weakness. "Your wife. How convenient. Especially with the vote coming up next week. The vote has nothing to do with my marriage. Doesn't it?" Morrison's eyes glittered. The county commission won't approve water rights for an unmarried man with your reputation. Too unstable, too unpredictable. But a married man? A family man. That changes things. Lena's stomach dropped. The vote. Water rights. This wasn't about her at all. This was business. Politics. Rowan Cole needed a wife the way a man needs a tool, functional, temporary, disposable. My marriage is personal. Rowan said, each word precise and dangerous. Not political. Of course. Morrison raised his glass in mock salute. Congratulations. I'm sure you'll be very happy. For however long it lasts. He walked away, and Lena felt Rowan's fingers flex against her back once, twice, like he was fighting to keep control. We need to talk, he said. Now. He guided her through the crowd with the kind of authority that made people step aside without thinking. Lena caught fragments of whispered conversation as they passed. Did you see her dress? Where did he find her? I heard, she's a nobody. Eleanor must be furious, and then they were in a side hallway away from the music and the lights and the hundreds of eyes that had been dissecting her like a specimen. Rowan released her, stepped back, put 3 feet of space between them like he couldn't stand to be close anymore. I apologize, he said, and his voice was different now, tired, almost human. That was unforgivable. What was using you like that? I had no right. Lena's laugh came out sharp and bitter. You saved me from getting arrested, or worse. I'd call that more than fair. I saved myself. Rowan ran a hand through his hair, disheveling the careful styling. Morrison was right. I need to be married to get those water rights approved. Without them, my ranch dies. 600 acres, 50 employees, all of it gone. So you grabbed the first woman you saw and announced she was your wife. Yes. At least he was honest. Lena sagged against the wall, feeling the adrenaline finally start to drain, leaving nothing but exhaustion behind. What happens when they figure out it's a lie? They won't, not if we're careful. Rowan met her eyes, and for the first time she saw past the coldness to something else. Desperation. The same desperation she'd been carrying for months. I'm offering you a deal, he said. Pretend to be my wife. 6 months. Maybe less if the commission approves the rights early. In exchange, I'll pay you $5,000. The number hit like a physical blow. 5,000. Enough to save her mother's house. Enough for her sister's medicine. Enough to breathe. Why me? Lena asked. You could have anyone. Because you're not from here. No history, no connections. And you were desperate enough to take a serving job at a party you clearly don't belong at. His gaze traced over her borrowed dress, her worn shoes. You need money. I need a wife. It's a simple transaction. Simple. Nothing about this was simple. But Lena was so tired of being hungry, tired of running, tired of watching everything fall apart while she fought and failed and fought again. What are the terms? Something shifted in Rowan's expression. Relief, maybe, or respect. You live at the ranch, share my house, attend events with me, play the role in public. And in private. In private, we're strangers, separate rooms, separate lives. This is a business arrangement, nothing more. Nothing more. Lena looked at this man with his expensive suit and his cold eyes, and his desperation that mirrored her own, and she thought about her mother's last letter. Thought about her sister's cough that wouldn't stop. Thought about the fact that she had $3 and nowhere to sleep tonight. 6 months, she said. 6 months. And at the end we walk away. Clean. No complications. No complications. Rowan agreed. Lena held out her hand. Rowan stared at it for a long moment, like he was seeing something dangerous in the gesture. Then he took it. His palm was warm, calloused, his grip firm. Deal, she said. Deal. They shook, and Lena felt the lie lock into place like a trap closing. The next morning started before dawn. Rowan had arranged for a car to take her to the ranch 30 miles outside Black Ridge Valley, deep in territory Lena had only seen on maps. She watched the landscape change through the window. Soft hills giving way to rough terrain, civilization, fading into something wild and lonely. The ranch house sat at the end of a long dirt road, surrounded by endless sky and grass that moved like water in the wind. It was bigger than she'd expected, 2 stories wraparound porch built from stone and timber that had weathered decades. Beautiful in a harsh, unforgiving way. Like the man who owned it. Rowan was waiting on the porch when the car pulled up dressed in work clothes, now denim and leather and dust. He looked different without the suit. More real, more dangerous. "I'll show you around," he said by way of greeting. "Then we'll go over the rules." Rules. Of course there would be rules. He walked her through the house with clipped efficiency. Kitchen, living room, his office off limits, guest rooms upstairs. And at the end of the hall, the master bedroom. "Yours," Rowan said, nodding toward it. Lena blinked. "What about you?" "I'll take one of the guest rooms." "But people will expect what we tell them to expect. In public, we're newlyweds. In private, we have boundaries." He met her eyes. "First rule? We don't cross the line. Ever. This stays professional." Professional. Like marriage was a business contract, which Lena supposed it was. "Second rule," Rowan continued. "You don't ask about my past, I don't ask about yours. We keep this surface level." Third rule. You attend every public event I need you at. No excuses. These people are vultures. They'll notice if you slip. Lena thought about Morrison's sharp eyes, the whispers that had followed her through the ballroom. What do I say when they ask about us, how we met? We'll build a story. Practice it until it's automatic. The key is consistency. Rowan moved to the window, staring out at his land. They can't prove it's fake if we never give them a crack to slip through. And when it's over, how do we end it? Quietly. A mutual parting. We'll say we realized we wanted different things. By then the water rights will be secured, and you'll have your money. Everyone walks away intact. Intact. Lena wasn't sure she believed that anymore. She'd been broken too many times to trust in clean endings. But she nodded anyway. Okay. Okay, Rowan echoed. Then, after a pause, there's food in the kitchen. Help yourself to anything. I have work to do. He left. Just walked out without another word, and Lena stood in the master bedroom that was supposed to be hers, surrounded by furniture that belonged to someone else's life, and wondered what she'd just agreed to. The first week was strange, awkward. They moved around each other like dancers who hadn't learned the steps: polite, distant, careful, never to touch. Rowan worked from dawn until dark, disappearing into the ranch operations and leaving Lena alone in a house too big and too quiet. She cleaned to fill the time. Cooked meals he barely ate. Tried to read in the evenings while he sat across the room with paperwork, the silence between them thick enough to choke on. Then Morrison came to visit. He arrived unannounced on a Tuesday afternoon, driving up in a truck that cost more than most houses. Lena was in the kitchen when she heard the engine, and something in the sound made her stomach clench. She found Rowan on the porch, his body language tight, defensive. "Morrison," he said flatly. "What do you want?" "Just being neighborly." Morrison climbed out of his truck, all casual confidence. "Thought I'd check on the newlyweds. See how married life is treating you." "We're fine." "Good, good." Morrison's gaze slid past Rowan to where Lena stood in the doorway. "Hello there, Mrs. Cole. Settling in all right, Mrs. Cole." The name still felt like a costume that didn't fit. "Yes," Lena said, keeping her voice steady. "Thank you." "Wonderful. I was just telling some folks at the club about you two. Everyone's so curious about the mystery bride." His smile was poison wrapped in silk. "Some people are wondering if maybe Rowan here hired an actress. You know, to fool the commission." The accusation hung in the air like a blade. Rowan's voice went lethal. "Get off my property." Now. No need to be hostile. I'm just repeating what I've heard." Morrison's eyes never left Lena's face. But if the marriage is real, surely you won't mind proving it. We don't have to prove anything to you. Not to me, to the commission. They're having doubts, you see, about the legitimacy of your sudden marriage. They're talking about requiring verification. What kind of verification? Morrison shrugged. Documentation, witnesses, maybe a few questions about your relationship, how you met, how long you've known each other, the little details that real couples know. His smile widened. Unless there's a problem. Lena saw it, then the trap. Morrison wasn't here by accident. He'd been planting doubts, building pressure, forcing them into a corner. If they couldn't convince the commission they were really married, Rowan would lose everything, and so would she. She stepped forward before she could think, moving to Rowan's side, slipping her hand into his. His fingers were cold. She squeezed, trying to signal something. "Trust me, play along. We can do this." "There's no problem," she said clearly. "Rowan and I are married. Really married. And if the commission wants to ask questions, we'll answer them." Rowan's hand tightened around hers, warning or agreement she couldn't tell. Morrison studied them both, his expression calculating. Then he laughed. "Well, all right then. I'll let them know you're ready. Should be interesting." He left. The dust from his truck settled slowly. Rowan pulled his hand free from Lena's grip. "You shouldn't have done that." "What was I supposed to do? Let him destroy the arrangement we just made? You just agreed to an interrogation. They're going to ask things we haven't prepared for, personal things. If we can't answer, then we better start preparing." Lena crossed her arms, feeling something stubborn and reckless rise in her chest. "You wanted a wife, fine. Let's be married. Really married. At least enough to fool Morrison and his commission." Rowan stared at her like she'd suggested something obscene. That wasn't the deal. The deal was 6 months of pretending. But if we're going to pull this off, we need to know each other. Actually know each other. Not this. She gestured at the space between them, whatever this is. This is professional distance. This is two strangers who can't even have a conversation. Lena's voice rose despite herself. "They're going to see right through us unless we do better." Silence. Rowan's jaw worked, tension radiating off him like heat. Finally, "What do you suggest? We talk, share things, build a real foundation even if the marriage isn't." Lena took a breath. "I'm not saying we have to become best friends, but we need to be able to sit in the same room without it feeling like a business meeting." "I don't do personal." "Then learn, because if we fail this test, we both lose." More silence. Then Rowan nodded once, sharp and reluctant. "Fine, we start tonight. Dinner. No work. Just talking." "Just talking," Lena agreed. She didn't realize until later, until she was alone in her too-big bedroom, staring at the ceiling, that she'd just agreed to something far more dangerous than pretending to be married. She'd agreed to actually knowing him. Dinner was excruciating. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table with plates of food, neither of them touched, and the silence stretched until Lena wanted to scream. "Where are you from?" Rowan finally asked, like the words cost him something. "Iowa, small town, you wouldn't know it." "Family. Mother and a younger sister. They still live there." Lena pushed food around her plate. "What about you?" "Here, born on this land, 3rd generation." Rowan's voice was flat, giving nothing away. "My parents died when I was 20. Left me the ranch and a mountain of debt." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was a long time ago." But the way he said it, clipped defensive, told Lena it wasn't long enough. Morrison mentioned someone named Eleanor. She ventured carefully. Rowan's fork hit his plate with a sharp clink. "Rule number 2. We don't ask about the past." "But if the commission asks?" "They won't. Eleanor has nothing to do with this." Except she clearly did. Lena could see it in the way Rowan's shoulders had gone rigid and the muscle ticking in his jaw. Whoever Eleanor was, she'd left scars. "Okay," Lena said quietly. No past, just present. They finished eating in silence. Then Rowan cleared both their plates, and walked out without another word. Lena sat alone at the table, and wondered how they were supposed to convince anyone they were in love, when they could barely make it through one meal. The interrogation came 3 days later. Rowan drove them into town in his truck, and Lena watched Black Ridge Valley appear through the windshield. Small, judgmental, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone and strangers were suspect by default. The commission met in a brick building near the courthouse, and when they walked in, 6 pairs of eyes turned to assess them with varying degrees of skepticism. Morrison was there sitting in the back with that same poisonous smile. Mr. and Mrs. Cole, the commission chairman said, a gray-haired woman with sharp eyes. Thank you for coming. Please sit. They sat. Rowan's hand found Lena's under the table, squeezing once reassurance or warning, she still couldn't tell. We just have a few questions about your marriage, the chairman continued. Standard procedure, you understand. We need to ensure legitimacy before approving water rights. Of course, Rowan said, his voice steady. How did you meet? Lena's mind went blank. They hadn't prepared this, hadn't built the story they'd promised to build. But Rowan's hand was still holding hers, and she felt him squeeze again. Trust me. At a market, Rowan said smoothly. About 8 months ago, I was in town selling cattle and Lena was buying supplies. She dropped her packages. I helped her pick them up. Love at first sight. The chairman's tone suggested she didn't believe in such things. Not exactly. Rowan glanced at Lena, and something in his expression made her breath catch. She told me I was in her way, called me a lumbering oaf, if I remember right. Lena felt a smile tug at her lips despite herself. You were in my way. And you were stubborn, says the man who wouldn't move. A ripple of laughter went through the commission. The chairman's expression softened slightly. When did you realize it was serious? This time Lena answered. He kept showing up, every market day, always with some excuse, needed supplies, checking on cattle, had business in town, but he'd find me, talk to me, and eventually... She trailed off, letting the implication hang. Eventually what? Morrison called from the back. Lena turned to look at him, and something fierce and protective rose in her chest. Eventually I realized he wasn't going to give up. And neither was I. Rowan's hand tightened around hers, and this time she knew what it meant. Thank you. The questions continued. How long had they dated? 6 months. Where did he propose? By the creek on his ranch. What did she love most about him? His stubbornness. What did he love most about her? Her strength. With every answer they built the lie higher, stronger, until Lena almost believed it herself. Finally, the chairman sat back. One more question, Mrs. Cole. Why marry him? A man with his reputation, difficult, isolated, with a failed engagement already in his past. Why take that risk? The room went silent. Morrison leaned forward, and Lena realized this was the real test. The one question that would either save them or destroy everything. She looked at Rowan, saw the tension in his shoulders, saw the fear he was trying so hard to hide. And she thought about the past 3 days, the awkward dinners, the careful distance, the way he'd protected her at the party, even though he didn't know her at all. Because he's worth it, she said quietly. Whatever happened before, whoever hurt him before, that's not who he is. And I'm not afraid of difficult. I'm afraid of safe and empty and predictable. Rowan's none of those things. Rowan was staring at her like she'd said something in a language he didn't speak. The chairman studied them both for a long, agonizing moment. Then she smiled. All right, I'm satisfied. Water rights approved, pending final paperwork. They'd won. They walked out of the building into bright sunlight, and Lena felt like she could finally breathe. Rowan's hand was still holding hers, and for a moment neither of them moved to let go. That was, Rowan started, terrifying. I was going to say impressive. He looked down at their joined hands, like he was just now realizing they were still connected. You're good at this. At lying. At making it believable. Lena pulled her hand free, suddenly needing the distance. It's what you're paying me for. Something flickered across Rowan's face. Disappointment maybe, or hurt. But it was gone too fast to read. Right, he said. Just business. Just business, Lena echoed. But as they drove back to the ranch in silence, she couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere in that room with all those questions and all those lies, something had shifted. Something neither of them had agreed to. Something dangerous. That night, Rowan didn't come to dinner. Lena set 2 plates, waited 30 minutes, then ate alone while the food on his side went cold. She told herself it didn't matter. This was the arrangement, separate lives, professional distance, exactly what they'd agreed to. But the empty chair across from her felt like an accusation. She was washing dishes when she heard the front door open, footsteps in the hallway. Then Rowan's voice, low and tired. I didn't know you'd cook. Lena didn't turn around. There's a plate in the oven if you're hungry. Silence. Then the scrape of a chair. She heard him sit, heard the clink of silverware, and something in her chest loosened slightly. We passed the test, he said finally. The paperwork came through this afternoon. Water rights approved. That's good. Yeah. A pause. What you said in there, about me being worth it, that was part of the performance. Lena interrupted, her hands stilling in the soapy water. I said what they needed to hear. Right, of course. But the hurt in his voice was unmistakable, and Lena hated herself for putting it there. She dried her hands, turned to face him. He was sitting at the table in work clothes, dust on his boots, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. How long were you engaged to Eleanor? She asked. Rowan's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. I told you not to ask about that. And I told you we need to know each other if this is going to work. Morrison brought her up. The commission chairman mentioned a failed engagement. What happens next time someone asks, and I don't know the answer? You deflect, you change the subject. You don't. He set the fork down too hard. You don't dig into things that are buried for a reason. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to protect us both. By making me talk about the worst mistake I ever made. The words came out raw, stripped of the careful control he usually wore like armor. Lena saw the wound beneath, still bleeding, still fresh, even though it must have been years. She sat down across from him. You don't have to tell me everything. Just enough that I don't make it worse. Rowan stared at his plate for a long time. Then quietly, 3 years. We were engaged for 3 years. What happened? She left. 2 weeks before the wedding, took half my savings and ran off with my business partner. His laugh was bitter. Turned out they'd been planning it for months. The engagement was just cover, a way to get close enough to steal everything that mattered. Lena felt something twist in her stomach. I'm sorry. Don't be. I was an idiot for trusting her, for believing someone could actually... He stopped himself, jaw clenching. Doesn't matter. I learned my lesson. What lesson? That love is a transaction. People stay as long as they're getting something. The moment that changes, they leave. He met her eyes, and his gaze was flat, empty. At least with you, we're honest about what this is. No pretending. No expectations. No pretending. Lena thought about the lie they'd just told the commission, the way her heart had jumped when she'd said he was worth it, the way his hand had felt holding hers. Right. No pretending. Rowan pushed his plate away, half the food still untouched. I have paperwork to finish. Thank you for dinner. He left. Again. And Lena sat at the table, wondering how someone could be so close and still feel completely unreachable. The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Rowan worked the ranch from dawn until dark, mending fences, managing cattle, handling the 100 small crises that came with running 600 acres. Lena found herself helping without being asked, mucking stables, feeding horses, learning the names of the ranch hands who watched her with cautious curiosity. You don't have to do this, Rowan said one afternoon, finding her in the barn with hay in her hair and dirt on her hands? I know. I'm paying you to pretend to be my wife, not work like a ranch hand. Maybe I like working. Lena straightened, wiping sweat from her forehead. Better than sitting in that house alone all day. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe respect. You're full of surprises, Mrs. Cole. The name still sent a jolt through her. So are you, Mr. Cole? Their eyes held for a moment too long. Then Rowan cleared his throat and walked away, and Lena went back to work, trying to ignore the way her hands were shaking. That evening he came to dinner, and the evening after that, and the one after that. They started talking carefully at first, then with increasing ease. He told her about the ranch, about the legacy his grandfather had built, about the weight of keeping it alive. She told him about Iowa, about her mother's stubbornness, about her sister's dreams of becoming a teacher. You send them all your money. Rowan observed one night, watching her seal an envelope with most of her first payment inside. They need it more than I do. You need it too. That was the whole point of this arrangement. The point was keeping them safe. That's what I'm doing. Rowan studied her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. You're going to end up with nothing. I'll end up with them, okay? That's not nothing. He didn't argue, just reached across the table and slid a check toward her. Extra, for the work you've been doing around here. That's not necessary. Take it, you've earned it. His voice was gruff, almost embarrassed. Good ranch hands are hard to find. Lena looked at the check, then at him. Is that what I am? A ranch hand? I don't know what you are. The admission seemed to cost him something. But you're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone temporary, someone I could forget about when this was over. The silence that followed was heavy with things neither of them knew how to say. Then Rowan's foreman, a grizzled man named Dutch, knocked on the door with news that one of the horses was in trouble. Rowan left without another word, and Lena sat alone with a check she didn't know if she should cash, and a question that felt too dangerous to answer. What did you expect? Someone I could forget. She was starting to realize that forgetting might be the one thing neither of them could do. The trouble came on a Saturday. Lena was in town buying supplies when she ran into Morrison at the general store. He was all politeness and poison, asking about the ranch, about Rowan, about how married life was treating her. Wonderful, Lena said, keeping her voice light. Couldn't be better. I'm so glad to hear it. Morrison's smile didn't reach his eyes. Although I have to say, there are some curious rumors going around. Lena's stomach dropped. What kind of rumors? Oh, you know how small towns are. People talk. They're saying you and Rowan seem more like business partners than husband and wife. That you sleep in separate rooms. That he barely touches you in public. We're private people. Of course. But you understand how it looks, especially after such a convenient marriage right before the water rights vote. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. Some folks are wondering if maybe the commission was fooled. If maybe this whole thing is a sham. It's not. I believe you, truly. But convincing me isn't the issue. It's convincing everyone else. Morrison straightened, adjusting his hat. There's a gala next week. Fundraiser for the county. Everyone who's anyone will be there, including most of the commission members. It would be a perfect opportunity to show everyone just how in love you two are. He walked away, leaving Lena standing in the middle of the store with her heart hammering and her hands clenched into fists. She drove back to the ranch faster than she should have, gravel spraying under the tires. Rowan was in the barn, and one look at her face made him put down the bridle he was mending. What happened? Morrison. He knows people are suspicious. He basically threatened us, said we need to prove we're really married at some gala next week, or the commission might investigate. Rowan's expression went cold. He's bluffing. Is he? Because it sounded pretty real to me. Morrison doesn't have the authority to. He has influence. You said it yourself. These people are vultures. If they start asking questions, if they start digging. Lena's voice cracked, despite her best efforts to stay calm. We'll lose everything. Rowan was quiet for a long moment. Then, what did he say we needed to do? Act like we're in love, really in love. Not just business partners who happen to live in the same house. We can do that. We did it at the commission hearing. That was answering questions in a room. This is a whole night of being watched, being judged, dancing, touching all of it. Lena wrapped her arms around herself. I don't know if I can fake that for hours. Then we practice. Practice what? Being in love. Practice being comfortable, with each other, with... Rowan hesitated, then held out his hand. With this. Lena stared at his outstretched palm. It was such a simple gesture, but her heart was racing like he'd asked her to jump off a cliff. She took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid, and for a moment they just stood there in the barn, with dust motes floating in the late afternoon light. See? Rowan's voice was rough. Not so bad. No, Lena whispered. Not so bad. But when he pulled her closer, just a step, just enough that she could feel the heat of him, her breath caught, and she knew she was lying. This was worse than bad. This was dangerous. They practiced every evening that week. Rowan would take her hand, pull her close, teach her how to move with him instead of against him. At first, it was awkward, stilted, both of them, too aware of every point of contact. But slowly they found a rhythm. You're thinking too much, Rowan said one night, his hand at the small of her back as they moved through the steps. I'm trying not to step on your feet. Stop trying. Just feel it. Feel what? The music, the movement. Me. Me. The word hung between them, heavy with implications neither of them wanted to acknowledge. Lena stopped thinking and started feeling. The pressure of his hand guiding her. The solid warmth of his chest. The way their bodies fit together like they'd been designed for this. And something in her chest cracked open, something she'd been keeping locked and safe. Lena! Rowan's voice was different now, lower, almost rough. She looked up and found him staring at her with an expression she'd never seen before. Not cold, not distant, not controlled. Hungry. We should stop, she managed. Yeah, we should. But neither of them moved. His hand tightened at her back. Her fingers curled into his shoulder. And for one suspended moment, Lena thought he might kiss her. Then a truck pulled up outside, headlights cutting through the darkness, and they sprang apart like they'd been caught doing something forbidden. Dutch climbed out, oblivious. Boss, we got a problem with the north fence. Looks like someone cut the wire. Rowan's expression shuddered instantly, all that heat vanishing behind the familiar walls. I'll be right there. He left. Again. And Lena stood alone in the living room with her heart still racing and her body still humming from his touch. This was supposed to be fake. This was supposed to be simple. But nothing about the way she'd felt in his arms had been fake or simple. The gala was exactly as awful as Lena had feared. She wore a dress Rowan had bought her, deep blue, elegant, expensive, and felt like an imposter the moment they walked through the doors. Everyone was watching, judging, whispering behind raised glasses. Breathe, Rowan murmured against her ear, his hand warm at her waist. You look beautiful. The compliment shocked her into meeting his eyes. He was looking at her like he meant it, and something in her chest fluttered dangerously. Thank you, she whispered. I mean it. Then Morrison was there, all false charm and sharp edges. The happy couple. Don't you two look lovely? Come, everyone's dying to see you. He dragged them into the crowd like trophies. Lena shook hands and smiled until her face ached, playing the role of devoted wife, while Rowan stood beside her with his hand never leaving her back. Protective. Possessive. Almost real. They're eating it up, he said quietly during a lull. Good. That's the point. Is it? Something in his tone made her look at him. What else would it be? But before he could answer, the music started and couples began filtering onto the dance floor. Morrison appeared again, grinning. Well, aren't you going to dance with your wife, Cole? Rowan's jaw tightened. Of course. He led her onto the floor, and suddenly they were back in that moment from the barn. His hand at her waist, hers on his shoulder, their bodies close enough that she could feel his heartbeat. But this time, there were 100 eyes watching. Just like we practiced, Rowan said. Just like we practiced, Lena echoed. Except it wasn't like practice. Because practice had been private, safe, something they could walk away from. This was public. This was real. This was everyone seeing the lie and believing it was truth. Or maybe seeing the truth and believing it was a lie. Lena didn't know anymore. You're shaking, Rowan said softly. I'm nervous. Don't be. I've got you. And somehow, impossibly, those 3 words settled something in her chest, made her breathe easier, made her lean into him instead of pulling away. They danced, and it felt like flying. I need to tell you something, Rowan said suddenly, his voice low enough that only she could hear. What? But Morrison cut in, tapping Rowan's shoulder with aggressive cheer. Mind if I steal your bride for one dance? Old tradition, you know. Groom's rival gets one turn. Rowan's entire body went rigid. Find another partner, Morrison. Come now, don't be selfish. Just one dance. Unless... Morrison's eyes glittered with malice. You don't trust your own wife. It was a trap. Refusing would look suspicious. Controlling. Exactly the kind of thing that would start more rumors. Lena squeezed Rowan's hand. It's fine. One dance. Lena, I've got this. Rowan let her go, and Morrison's hand replaced his at her waist, too tight, too low. She forced herself not to flinch. You're quite the actress, Morrison said, as they moved through the steps. I don't know what you mean. Oh, I think you do. The loving wife, the devoted partner. You play it very well. He leaned closer, his breath hot against her ear. But I've been watching. I see the cracks. There are no cracks. Aren't there separate bedrooms? Careful distance. The way he looks at you like he's trying to solve a problem instead of love a woman. Morrison's grip tightened. How much is he paying you? Lena's blood ran cold. Excuse me. To play this role. To be his convenient wife. I'm curious about the going rate for that kind of performance. You're out of line. Am I? Or am I the only one willing to say what everyone's thinking? His smile was cruel. You're a fraud, Mrs. Cole, and sooner or later everyone's going to see it. The music ended. Morrison released her with a mocking bow, and Lena stood frozen in the middle of the dance floor, feeling like she'd been stripped naked in front of a crowd. Then Rowan was there, his hand finding hers, his body angling between her and Morrison like a shield. We're leaving, he said flatly. The party's just getting started. I don't care. We're done here. He pulled her through the crowd, ignoring the stares, the whispers, the way Morrison's laughter followed them out into the night. They made it to the truck before Lena's legs gave out. She sagged against the passenger door, shaking, and Rowan caught her before she could fall. What did he say to you? His voice was lethal. He knows. Or suspects. He asked how much you're paying me. Rowan went very still. What did you tell him? Nothing, but he's not going to stop. He's going to keep pushing until... Until what? Until we break. Until you leave. Rowan's hands were on her shoulders, now his eyes burning into hers. Is that what you want? To walk away from this? I don't know what I want anymore. Lena admitted the truth, spilling out before she could stop it. This was supposed to be simple. A transaction. But it's not simple, Rowan. Not when we're practicing dances in your living room and eating dinner together every night and what? And I can't tell what's real anymore. I can't tell if I'm playing a role or if... She stopped herself, terrified of finishing the sentence. But Rowan finished it for her. Or if you're starting to feel something you shouldn't. The words hung between them like a confession. "I'm sorry," Lena whispered. "I know that's not part of the deal." He kissed her. Not gently, not carefully, but like he'd been holding back for weeks, and finally couldn't anymore. His hands tangled in her hair, his body pressed against hers, and Lena felt every wall she'd built come crashing down. This wasn't fake. This wasn't pretend. This was real and terrifying and perfect. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. "That," Lena started, "was a mistake." Rowan finished, but his hands were still in her hair, his forehead resting against hers. "We can't do this." "I know. The arrangement. I know. If we cross this line, I know Rowan. I know all the reasons why we shouldn't." She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "But I'm tired of pretending I don't feel this." He stared at her like she'd just set fire to everything he'd built. "You're supposed to leave when this is over. That was the deal." "Maybe I don't want to leave." "You don't mean that." "Don't tell me what I mean." "Lena." His voice cracked on her name. "I can't do this. I can't let myself—" He stepped back, putting distance between them like it physically hurt. "Eleanor destroyed me. I barely survived it. If I let you in, if I let myself feel something real and you leave anyway, I'm not Eleanor. Everyone leaves eventually. Everyone takes what they need and goes. That's just how it works. Not everyone, not me. You don't know that. You can't promise that." He was backing toward the driver's side now, his expression shuddering with every step. "This was a mistake, all of it. We need to go back to the arrangement. Professional distance. No complications." "It's already complicated." "Then we uncomplicate it." He yanked open the truck door. "Get in. We're going home." Home. The word landed like a blow because that's what the ranch had started to feel like. Home. And not because of the house or the land, but because of him. Lena got in the truck. They drove back in silence, and when they pulled up to the dark house, Rowan was out and inside before she could even unbuckle her seatbelt. She found him in the kitchen, pouring whiskey with shaking hands. "This doesn't work if you run every time things get difficult," she said. "I'm not running. I'm protecting us both." "From what? From feeling something real?" "Yes." He downed the whiskey in one burning swallow. "Because real things break. And I've been broken enough." Lena wanted to scream, wanted to shake him, wanted to make him see that pushing her away was just another form of breaking. Instead, she said, "Fine, professional distance, no complications. That's what you want. That's what we agreed to. Then you've got it." She turned to go, then stopped at the doorway. "But just so you know, when you kissed me tonight, that was the most honest thing either of us has done since this started. And pretending it didn't happen isn't going to make it go away." She walked upstairs to her room and closed the door, and she didn't let herself cry until she was sure he couldn't hear. Downstairs, Rowan poured another whiskey and stared at the empty glass like it held answers he didn't want to find. The kiss had been a mistake. He knew that. Knew it the moment his lips touched hers, knew it when his hands tangled in her hair, knew it when every carefully constructed wall he'd built came crashing down with one touch. But knowing it was a mistake didn't stop him from wanting to do it again. He slammed the glass down hard enough to crack it. This wasn't supposed to happen. Lena was supposed to be temporary. A solution to a problem. 6 months, and she'd be gone, taking her money and leaving him exactly where he'd been before, alone, safe, in control. Except he didn't feel in control anymore. He felt like a man standing on the edge of a cliff, and the ground was crumbling beneath his feet. The worst part was that she was right. That kiss had been the most honest thing between them since this whole charade started, and pretending otherwise was just another lie on top of all the others. He heard her moving around upstairs, footsteps, water running the creak of bed springs. She was 10 feet above him and might as well have been 1,000 miles away. The distance he'd insisted on, the professional boundaries he'd demanded, suddenly felt suffocating, Rowan grabbed his coat and walked out into the night, needing space to breathe, to think, to remember why he couldn't let this happen. But all he could remember was the way she'd looked at him when she said, "I'm not Eleanor." Like she actually believed it. The next morning, Lena came downstairs to find Rowan already gone. There was coffee made still hot, and a note on the counter in his sharp handwriting. "Working the south pasture, back late." She crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. So this was how it was going to be. Avoidance. Distance. Him running every time things got too real. Fine. She could play that game too. Except she couldn't. Because every room in this house reminded her of him. The kitchen where they'd shared awkward dinners that turned into real conversations. The living room where he'd taught her to dance. His hand warm at her waist, his voice rough when he said, "Just feel it." Even her bedroom, which was supposed to be her sanctuary, felt wrong, now too big, too empty, too full of all the things she'd convinced herself she didn't want. Lena dressed and went out to the barn, needing to work, to move, to do something other than stand around waiting for a man who'd made it clear he didn't want what she was offering. Dutch was there repairing tack with practiced efficiency. He looked up when she entered, his weathered face creasing into something that might have been sympathy. "Boss is avoiding you," he said bluntly. "I noticed." "He's scared." "Of what, me?" "Of what you make him feel." Dutch set down the leather he'd been working. "Known Rowan since he was a kid. Never seen him like this. Eleanor broke something in him, but you—" He shook his head. "You're putting it back together, and that terrifies him more than staying broken." Lena felt her throat tighten. "I don't know how to help someone who won't let me near him." "You can't. He's got to choose it himself." Dutch picked up his work again. "Question is, how long are you willing to wait?" She didn't have an answer. Rowan didn't come back until after midnight. Lena heard the truck pull up, heard him move through the house with careful quietness, like he was trying not to wake her. But she was already awake, had been for hours, staring at the ceiling and wondering when she'd become the kind of person who waited for someone who kept running away. 3 days passed like that. Rowan working himself to exhaustion, coming home after she'd gone to bed, leaving before she woke up. They were living in the same house and existing in completely different worlds. On the 4th day, Lena found him in the barn at dawn, saddling a horse with mechanical precision. "We can't keep doing this," she said. His hands stilled on the saddle straps. "Doing what?" "Pretending the other person doesn't exist. We still have 2 months left on this arrangement. We can't avoid each other the entire time." "I'm not avoiding you. I'm working." "You're running. There's a difference." Lena crossed her arms. "Look, I get it. The kiss was a mistake. You've made that very clear. But we're adults. We can move past it and go back to—" "I can't." The admission was so quiet she almost missed it. "Can't what?" Rowan turned to face her, and the exhaustion in his eyes was devastating. "Move past it. I've tried. Spent the last 3 days trying. But every time I close my eyes, I'm back in that parking lot with you in my arms, and I—" He stopped himself, jaw clenching. "I can't do this, Lena. I can't be what you need." "What I need? You don't even know what I need." "You need someone who can love you without being terrified it's going to destroy him. Someone who doesn't wake up every morning expecting you to take everything and leave. Someone better than me." "Stop telling me what I need." Her voice cracked despite her best efforts. "You want to know what I actually need? I need you to stop treating this like some inevitable tragedy. I need you to stop punishing me for things Eleanor did. And I need you to look at me, really look at me, and see that I'm here, still here, even after you've given me every reason to walk away." Rowan stared at her like she was speaking a language he'd forgotten how to understand. "Why?" he asked finally. "Why are you still here?" "Because the money's good. Because I made a deal. Because I'm stubborn." Lena took a step closer. "Pick whichever answer makes you feel safest, Rowan. But we both know the real reason. Don't. I'm falling for you. There. I said it. And you can run from it, you can hide from it. You can work yourself to death trying to ignore it. But it's still true. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Rowan grabbed the reins and swung up onto the horse in one fluid motion. I'm going to check the fence line. I'll be back tonight. That's it. That's all you're going to say. What do you want me to say, Lena? That I feel the same way. That this is anything other than a disaster waiting to happen. His voice was rough, barely controlled. I can't give you what you're asking for. I don't have it anymore. He rode off, leaving her standing in the barn with tears burning behind her eyes and anger burning in her chest. Dutch appeared from the tack room, shaking his head. Give him time. How much time? Because I'm starting to think there's not enough time in the world to fix whatever Eleanor broke. Maybe. Or maybe he just needs someone to show him it's worth trying to fix. Lena wiped her eyes roughly. I can't keep fighting for someone who won't fight for himself. No. Dutch agreed. You can't. But sometimes people need to see what they're about to lose before they understand what they're fighting for. That night, Lena packed her bag. Not everything. Just enough for a few days. Enough to make a point. She left it in her room and went downstairs waiting for Rowan to come home so she could tell him she was leaving. Not permanently, just for a while. Long enough to clear her head and figure out if this was worth the constant heartbreak. But Rowan didn't come home. Midnight passed. Then 1 in the morning. Then 2. And Lena's anger started transforming into something else entirely. Fear. She called his cell. No answer. Called Dutch. No answer. Finally, she grabbed her coat and went out to the truck, her hands shaking as she started the engine. Something was wrong. She could feel it like ice in her veins. She drove the fence line he'd mentioned, her headlights cutting through the darkness, searching for any sign of him. Nothing. She was about to turn back when she saw it. His horse riderless, standing in the middle of the road. Lena slammed on the brakes. The horse shied away, spooked, and that's when she saw him. Rowan on the ground, 30 feet away, not moving. She was out of the truck and running before she could think, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Rowan. Rowan. He groaned, trying to push himself up, and Lena's knees nearly gave out with relief. Not dead. Hurt, but not dead. Don't move, she said, her hands running over him, checking for broken bones, blood, anything. What happened? Horse spooked. Something in the brush. I fell. He tried to sit up again, winced. I'm fine. You're not fine. You could have a concussion. Broken ribs. Internal bleeding. Lena. His hand caught hers, stopping her frantic checking. I'm okay. But his voice was shaking, and when she looked at his face in the dim light, she saw something she'd never seen before. Vulnerability, raw and unguarded. I thought you were dead, she whispered. I saw you on the ground, and I thought, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He was pulling her closer now, his other hand coming up to cup her face. For everything. For running. For pushing you away. For being so goddamn scared that I almost what? Almost lost the best thing that's happened to me in years. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, catching a tear she didn't realize had fallen. You were right. About all of it. I've been punishing you for Eleanor's mistakes. I've been treating this like it's doomed because I'm too much of a coward to believe it could be real. Rowan, let me finish. Please. He took a breath, and she could see how much this was costing him. When I was lying there before you found me, all I could think was that I'd wasted these past weeks. Wasted time I could have spent with you instead of running from you. And if I died out here, you'd never know that I... His voice cracked. That I feel it too. What you said this morning. I feel it too, and it terrifies me, but not as much as losing you does. Lena's breath caught. You mean that every word? His hand tightened on hers. I don't know how to do this. Don't know how to let someone in without expecting them to leave. But I want to try. If you're willing to be patient with me, if you haven't already given up. She thought about the packed bag waiting in her room upstairs. Thought about how close she'd come to walking away. And she realized that Dutch had been right. Sometimes people needed to see what they were about to lose. I packed a bag tonight, she admitted. I was going to leave for a few days, to give us both space to figure out what we wanted. Something like panic flashed across Rowan's face. And now I'm unpacking it. She leaned down, pressing her forehead to his. Because what I want is you. The real you. Not the walls you hide behind. Not the fear you use as armor. Just you. I'm a mess, Lena. Broken and scared, and probably going to mess this up more times than I get it right. Good. Because I'm broke stubborn and falling for a man who can't even admit he's falling back. She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. We're both disasters. Might as well be disasters together. Rowan's laugh was rough, almost broken. That might be the worst pitch for a relationship I've ever heard. Yeah, you have a better one. Instead of answering, he kissed her. Soft this time, gentle, like he was trying to memorize the feel of her lips against his. When he finally pulled back, his eyes were bright with something that looked dangerously close to hope. Help me up, he said. Let's go home. Home. That word again. But this time it felt right. They made it back to the ranch just before dawn, Rowan moving slower than he wanted to admit, his ribs clearly bothering him despite his protests. Lena forced him to sit at the kitchen table while she made coffee and inspected the bruising blooming across his side. You need to see a doctor, she said. I'm fine. You fell off a horse and lay in a field for 2 hours. You're not fine. Lena. Don't Lena me. You're going to the clinic, or I'm calling Dutch to drag you there myself. Rowan caught her wrist as she reached for her phone. You're bossy when you're worried. And you're impossible when you're hurt. But her voice softened despite herself. Please, let me take care of you. Something in his expression shifted surprise, maybe gratitude. No one's taken care of me in a long time. Then it's about time someone started. She drove him to the clinic in town over his continued protests and sat with him while the doctor confirmed what she'd suspected. Bruised ribs, mild concussion. Nothing permanently damaged, but enough that he needed rest. Real rest, not the kind where he worked through the pain. 2 weeks, the doctor said firmly. Light duty only. No riding, no heavy lifting. And someone needs to check on you every few hours for the next 48 hours. I'll make sure of it, Lena said before Rowan could argue. On the drive home, he was quiet, staring out the window with that same unreadable expression he wore when he was thinking too hard. What? Lena finally asked. Nothing. That's not true. Just thinking about what Dutch is going to say when he finds out I got thrown. He's going to say you're lucky you didn't break your neck. Lena glanced at him. And that I'm good for you. He's been saying that for weeks. Has he? Yeah, keeps telling me I'm an idiot for keeping you at arm's length. Rowan shifted in his seat, wincing. Turns out he was right. They pulled up to the ranch, and Lena helped him inside despite his insistence that he could walk on his own. She settled him on the couch with ice for his ribs and orders to stay put. This is ridiculous, he grumbled. I have work to do. Dutch can handle it. You're staying here. For 2 weeks. For as long as it takes. She sat down next to him, careful not to jostle his injured side. Besides, this gives us time to figure out what we're doing. What we're doing. With this. With us. We said we were going to try, but we never actually talked about what that means. Rowan was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly he reached for her hand. It means no more running, no more separate rooms and careful distance. It means actually trying to build something real instead of hiding behind the arrangement. What about the arrangement? We still have 2 months left. Forget the arrangement. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. Stay because you want to. Not because I'm paying you. Not because we have a deal. Just because. Lena's heart stuttered. You're saying you don't want this to be temporary anymore. I'm saying I don't know what I want long term, but I know I want you here, with me, for as long as you're willing to stay. He met her eyes, and the vulnerability there was almost painful to see. Is that enough? It should have been a simple question. But Lena knew what he was really asking. Could she love someone who couldn't promise forever? Could she stay with someone who might never fully heal from what Eleanor had done? Could she risk her heart on a man who was still learning how to trust? Yeah, she said quietly. It's enough. The relief on his face was answer enough. They spent the next 2 days in a strange kind of intimacy, Lena checking on him every few hours, like the doctor ordered Rowan accepting her care with a grace that surprised them both. They talked, really talked, about childhoods and dreams and all the small details that had been off limits under the old rules. She told him about her father's death, about the weight of being the oldest, about the guilt of leaving her family to chase work that kept falling through. He told her about his parents' accident, about the years of barely surviving while the ranch hemorrhaged money, about Eleanor's betrayal, and the way it had taught him to lock everything away. I thought if I never let anyone close, I could never get hurt again, he admitted one night, lying on the couch with his head in her lap. Turns out I was just hurting myself in a different way. Lena's fingers threaded through his hair, gentle and soothing. We all do that. Build walls to keep the pain out, and end up keeping everything good out too. When did you get so wise? When I met a stubborn rancher who taught me that sometimes the scariest thing is exactly what you need. He caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. On the 3rd day, Morrison showed up. Lena saw the truck coming from the kitchen window and felt her stomach drop. Nothing good ever came from that man's visits. Stay here, she told Rowan, who was already trying to stand. Like hell, that's my property he's trespassing on. And you have bruised ribs. Sit down before you hurt yourself worse. But Morrison was already on the porch, knocking with aggressive cheerfulness. Lena opened the door before Rowan could get up. Mrs. Cole, how lovely. Is your husband home? He's resting. What do you want? Just checking in. Heard there was an accident. Wanted to make sure everything was all right. The concern in his voice was so fake it was almost funny. He's fine. Thanks for stopping by. She started to close the door, but Morrison's foot blocked it. Actually, I need to speak with him. Ranch business. Won't take long. If it's business, you can come back next week when he's... It's fine, Lena. Rowan appeared behind her, moving slower than usual, but standing tall. Let him in. Morrison's eyes catalogued every bruise, every careful movement with undisguised interest. Rough fall, I heard. I've had worse. I'm sure. Still must be nice having such a devoted wife to nurse you back to health. His smile was poison. Almost makes the marriage seem real. The implication hung in the air like a threat. It is real, Lena said coldly. Of course it is, although I have to say some interesting information came across my desk recently. Morrison pulled out a folded paper from his jacket. Copy of your marriage license, or rather the application for one, filed just 2 days before the commission hearing. Lena felt the floor drop out from under her. Funny timing, wouldn't you say? Morrison continued. Almost like someone knew they needed to be married quickly, for, say, a water rights vote. Rowan's voice went deadly quiet. Get to the point. The point is, I have friends on the commission who are very interested in this timeline, who are wondering if maybe they were misled about the nature of your marriage. And if they were misled? Morrison's smile widened. Well, those water rights could be revoked, along with some other consequences. Fraud, perjury, maybe even criminal charges. The threat was clear, explicit, devastating. "What do you want?" Rowan asked. "Your ranch. Sell it to me at market value, and all these questions go away. Keep fighting, and I'll make sure the commission knows exactly what kind of arrangement you two really have." Lena felt Rowan go rigid beside her, his breath catching like he'd been punched. The ranch. Everything he'd fought for. Everything his grandfather had built. Morrison was demanding all of it. "Get out," Rowan said, his voice shaking with barely controlled rage. "I'll give you 48 hours to think about it. After that, I go to the commission with everything I have." Morrison headed for the door, then paused. "Oh, and Mrs. Cole, you might want to think about what happens when they start asking questions under oath. Perjury carries jail time." He left. The sound of his truck fading felt like a countdown clock starting. Rowan stood frozen, staring at the space where Morrison had been. Then, without a word, he walked to his office and slammed the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Lena followed, pushing the door open without knocking. "We need to talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about." Rowan was at his desk yanking open drawers like he was looking for something that didn't exist. "He has proof, a timeline. We filed for the marriage license 2 days before the hearing. Any judge will see it for exactly what it is. So we explain. We tell them the truth." "The truth." Rowan's laugh was bitter. "That I hired you to pretend to be my wife so I could get water rights." "That's literally fraud, Lena. That's exactly what he's accusing us of." "But it's not pretend anymore. We're together, really together." "Bye. Are we? Because last I checked, we've kissed twice and had a few conversations. That's not a marriage. That's not enough to convince a judge this wasn't a scheme from the start." His words landed like blows. Lena felt something crack in her chest. "So what are you saying, that the past few days meant nothing?" "I'm saying they don't erase the lie we started with." Rowan braced his hands on the desk, his head dropping. "Morrison wins. He's been planning this from the beginning, waiting for the perfect moment to trap us. Then we fight. We get a lawyer. With what money, legal battles cost thousands, tens of thousands. And even if we could afford it, we'd lose." He looked up, and the defeat in his eyes was devastating. "The evidence is right there. We got married for business reasons. That's fraud. End of story." "It's not the end. It doesn't have to be." "Yes, it does." Rowan straightened, and she watched him rebuilding those walls brick by brick. "I'm selling the ranch to Morrison. It's the only way to make this go away." "No, Rowan, no. This ranch is everything to you. And you're looking at jail time if I don't." His voice cracked. "You think I'm going to let you get charged with perjury? Go to prison because I dragged you into this? I chose this. I knew the risks. You didn't know anything. You were desperate, and I took advantage of that. This is my fault. All of it. And I'm not letting you pay for my mistakes." Lena felt tears burning behind her eyes. "So you're just giving up handing Morrison everything he wants?" "I'm protecting you. That's what matters." "Stop protecting me." The words came out as a shout. "Stop making decisions for me like I'm some fragile thing that needs to be saved. I'm an adult. I can handle the consequences of my own choices." "Not this consequence. Not prison." "Then what? You lose the ranch, Morrison wins, and we just walk away. Pretend none of this happened." Rowan's silence was answer enough. "Oh my God." Lena's voice dropped to a whisper. "You're doing it again. Pushing me away. Using this as an excuse to—" "It's not an excuse. It's reality. It's fear." She moved closer, forcing him to look at her. "You're terrified that this is real, that we're real, so you're burning it down before it can hurt you, just like you've been doing since Eleanor. Don't bring her into this. She's already in it. She's in every wall you build, every time you run, every decision you make to protect yourself instead of fighting for something worth having." Lena's hands were shaking. "I fell for you, Rowan. Really fell. And you feel the same way, I know you do. But you'd rather lose everything than risk admitting it." "That's not—" Isn't it? Tell me the truth. Right now. Do you love me? The question hung between them like a grenade with the pin pulled. Rowan stared at her, his jaw working, his hands clenched into fists. For a moment, she thought he might actually say it, might actually let her in. Then, "It doesn't matter what I feel. This is over." The words hit like a physical blow. Lena took a step back, then another, feeling like the ground was collapsing beneath her feet. "You're right," she said quietly. "It is over." She walked out of the office, up the stairs, straight to her room. The packed bag was still there, exactly where she'd left it before finding Rowan in that field. She grabbed it, added the rest of her things with mechanical efficiency, and walked back downstairs. Rowan was standing in the hallway looking like he'd been gutted. "Where are you going?" "Anywhere but here." Lena headed for the door. "You want to protect me, fine. Consider me protected. But I'm not staying to watch you destroy yourself." "Lena, wait." "For what?" "For you to change your mind. We both know that's not going to happen." She turned at the door, and the tears she'd been holding back finally spilled over. "You were right about one thing. This was always going to end. I just didn't think you'd be the one to make sure of it." She left. Walked out to her car, threw her bag in the back seat, and drove away from the ranch without looking back. It was only when she was 5 miles down the road that she had to pull over because she couldn't see through the tears anymore. Rowan stood in the empty hallway long after the sound of her car had faded. His ribs ached, his head pounded. But neither of those compared to the hollow feeling in his chest where something vital used to be. He'd done the right thing, protected her, made sure Morrison couldn't touch her. That's what mattered. Except it didn't feel like it mattered. It felt like he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. Dutch found him an hour later, still standing in the same spot. "Lena's gone," the foreman said. It wasn't a question. "Yeah. You're a damn fool." "I'm keeping her safe." "You're keeping yourself safe." Dutch's voice was hard. "Morrison threatened you, and instead of fighting, you pushed away the one person who actually gives a damn about you. That's not protection. That's cowardice." "You don't understand." "I understand plenty. I understand you've spent 3 years convinced you're better off alone, that everyone who gets close is just going to hurt you, and now you've finally found someone who sees past all your bullshit and actually loves you anyway, and you can't handle it." Dutch shook his head in disgust. "Your grandfather built this ranch with his bare hands, fought drought and debt and every other disaster you can imagine. And he did it because he had something worth fighting for. What do you have, Rowan? What are you fighting for?" "The ranch. The ranch is just dirt and timber if you've got no one to share it with. And you just sent away the only person who made it feel like home." The words landed like punches. Rowan felt something crack inside him, the last of those carefully constructed walls finally giving way. "I don't know how to fix this," he admitted, his voice breaking. "I don't know how to be what she needs." "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to try." Dutch gripped his shoulder. "But first you have to decide what you're really willing to lose. The ranch or her." Rowan closed his eyes. Saw Lena's face when she'd said she loved him. Saw the devastation in her eyes when he'd pushed her away. Saw the empty hallway and the empty house and the empty future stretching out ahead of him. And he realized with sudden, terrible clarity that Dutch was right. The ranch without her was just dirt. Just a prison he'd built to keep himself safe and alone. "I need to find her," he said. "Yeah, you do." Lena made it to a motel on the edge of Black Ridge Valley before she admitted she had nowhere else to go. She checked in, threw her bag on the bed, and sat in the dim room staring at her phone. Her mother had called twice. Her sister once. She couldn't talk to them. Couldn't explain that she'd fallen in love with a man who was too broken to love her back, that she'd lost the money she'd promised to send, that everything had fallen apart again. She was so tired of things falling apart. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Morrison." Lena's blood ran cold. She almost deleted it. Almost blocked the number. But something made her respond, About what? The reply came instantly. About saving Rowan's ranch, and making sure you both walk away from this intact. Meet me at the diner on Main. 1 hour. It was a trap. Had to be. Morrison didn't do anything out of kindness. But if there was even a chance he could help, even a possibility of fixing this mess. Lena grabbed her keys and headed for the door. The diner was exactly the kind of place Morrison would choose, public enough that nothing too terrible could happen, private enough for real conversation. He was already there, sitting in a back booth with coffee and that same poisonous smile. Mrs. Cole, so glad you could make it. What do you want? Lena slid into the seat across from him, keeping her hands visible, her body tense. To make you an offer. A real one this time. Morrison pushed a folder across the table. I've been looking into your situation. Your mother's house, your sister's medical bills. You're drowning in debt, aren't you? Lena's stomach dropped. How did you? I have resources, and I like to know who I'm dealing with. He leaned back, studying her. Here's what I'm proposing. You convince Rowan to sell me the ranch voluntarily. No lawyers, no commission investigation, just a clean sale. In exchange, I pay off all your family's debts. Clear slate. The offer was staggering. Impossible. Everything she'd been fighting for handed to her on a silver platter. Why? She asked. Why would you do that? Because I want the ranch, and this is the cleanest way to get it. Rowan respects you, trusts you. If you tell him this is the right move, he'll listen. And if I don't? Morrison's smile turned cold. Then I go to the commission tomorrow with proof of fraud. You both face criminal charges. Your family loses their house anyway because you'll be too busy dealing with legal fees and possible jail time. And Rowan still loses the ranch. Except this way, everyone loses. It was elegant in its cruelty. A choice that wasn't really a choice at all. I need to think about it, Lena said. You have until tomorrow morning. After that, the offer expires, and I make my phone call. Morrison stood, dropping cash on the table. Think carefully, Mrs. Cole. This is your family's future we're talking about. He left, and Lena sat alone in the booth with a folder full of her own failures staring back at her. She could save her family, save her mother's house, pay for her sister's medicine, give them the security she'd been chasing for months. All she had to do was convince Rowan to give up the one thing that mattered most to him. Or she could refuse. Let Morrison destroy them both. Lose everything for the sake of principle. Her phone rang. Rowan's name on the screen. She stared at it for 3 rings before answering. What? Where are you? His voice was rough, desperate. I need to see you. There's nothing left to say. There's everything to say. I was wrong, about all of it. About pushing you away, about giving up, about... He stopped, and she heard him take a shaking breath. About not fighting for you. Lena's throat tightened. Rowan. I love you. God help me. I love you, and I've been so terrified of it that I almost destroyed the only real thing I've had in years. But I'm done being scared. I'm done running. I want to fight. For the ranch, for us. For a future that's not just surviving, but actually living. His voice cracked. But I can't do it without you. The words she'd been waiting to hear. The confession she'd given up hoping for. And all she could think about was the folder in front of her and the impossible choice Morrison had laid at her feet. Where are you? Rowan asked again. Please, let me come to you. Lena closed her eyes. The motel off Route 9, room 14. I'll be there in 10 minutes. He hung up, and Lena sat in the diner booth staring at Morrison's offer and wondering how you choose between the person you love and the family that raised you. Rowan made it in 8 minutes. Lena heard his truck pull up, heard his footsteps on the motel walkway, heard the sharp knock on her door. She opened it, and the sight of him rumpled, exhausted, his eyes burning with something that looked like hope, nearly broke her. You came, he said. You asked me to. I did more than ask. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. I'm sorry. For everything. For making you feel like you weren't worth fighting for. For choosing fear over you. For... Morrison made me an offer. Lena interrupted. Rowan went still. What kind of offer? She told him. All of it. The debt, the ultimatum, the choice that wasn't really a choice. With every word she watched his expression shift from hope to understanding, to something that looked like grief. He wants you to convince me to sell, Rowan said when she finished. Yes. And if you do, your family is saved. Yes. But if you don't, we all lose. Lena nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Rowan moved to the window, staring out at the parking lot. What are you going to do? I don't know. The admission came out broken. I came here to save my family. That was the whole point. The money, the arrangement, all of it. And now I can actually do it. But the cost is me and the ranch. I can't ask you to give that up. It's your legacy, your grandfather's legacy, everything you've fought for. And your family is everything you've fought for. Rowan turned to face her, and the acceptance in his eyes was devastating. So if you need to take Morrison's deal, I'll understand. I'll sell the ranch, make sure he keeps his word about your family, and then what? We just walk away, pretend this never happened. If that's what it takes to keep your mother's house and your sister healthy, yes. He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. I meant what I said. I love you. But love isn't about holding on when it hurts someone. It's about letting go when that's what they need. Lena felt tears streaming down her face. You're saying goodbye. I'm saying I choose you. Whatever you decide, I choose you, even if that means losing you. The words should have been romantic, beautiful, but all Lena felt was the crushing weight of an impossible decision. Save her family. Destroy the man she loved. Or save the man she loved. Watch her family lose everything. I need time, she whispered. You have until morning. That's what Morrison said, right? Right. Rowan pulled her into his arms, careful of his injured ribs, and held her like he was trying to memorize the feel of her. Whatever you choose, I need you to know something. These past months, even with all the lying and the running and the mess we made, they've been the best of my life. Because of you. Lena buried her face in his chest, breathing him in, feeling his heartbeat against her cheek. I love you too. That's what makes this so impossible. I know. They stood like that for a long time. Two people who'd found each other too late, holding on while they still could. Finally, Rowan pulled back. I should go. Let you think. Stay. The word came out desperate. Just for tonight. Stay with me. He looked at her like she'd offered him the world. Are you sure? I'm not sure about anything anymore, except that I don't want to be alone tonight. So he stayed. They lay on the motel bed together, not sleeping, just holding each other, while the hours ticked away toward morning and the decision that would change everything. Tell me a story, Lena said into the darkness. About the ranch, about your grandfather. Rowan's arms tightened around her. He built the house himself. Took him 3 years. Every board, every nail. My grandmother thought he was crazy, but he said a man's got to build something that lasts. His voice was soft, nostalgic. He used to tell me that land doesn't belong to us. We belong to it, and our job is to take care of it for the next generation. What would he say if you sold it? I don't know. Maybe that some things are worth more than land. Maybe that the next generation isn't about bloodlines, it's about the people we choose to love. Lena turned in his arms to face him. You think he'd understand? I think he'd want me to be happy. And I haven't been happy, really happy in years. Not until you. They were so close, she could feel his breath on her face. Could see the gold flecks in his eyes even in the dim light. Kiss me, she whispered. He did. Slow and tender and devastating. A kiss that felt like a beginning and an ending all at once. When they finally pulled apart, Rowan pressed his forehead to hers. Whatever happens tomorrow, I need you to know this was real. All of it. The most real thing I've ever had." "I know," Lena said. "I know." But knowing didn't make the morning any easier. Dawn came too fast. Lena woke to find Rowan already up, standing at the window with his phone in his hand. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Calling my lawyer. If you decide to take Morrison's deal, I want to make sure the sale is airtight, that he can't back out of helping your family." "Rowan?" "I mean it, Lena. If this is happening, I'm making damn sure you get what you need out of it." She sat up, pulling the blanket around herself. "What if I don't take the deal? Then we fight. Together. And probably lose. But at least we lose on our own terms." It was the answer she'd needed to hear. Not permission to choose him over her family, but acknowledgement that whatever she decided, he'd stand with her. Lena looked at her phone. 7:43 a.m. Morrison had given her until 9. She thought about her mother's last letter, thought about her sister's cough, thought about the bank notices and the medical bills and all the reasons she'd taken this arrangement in the first place. Then she thought about Rowan's grandfather building a house that would last, about legacy and love and the difference between surviving and actually living, and she made her choice. "Call Morrison," she said. Rowan's expression didn't change. "What do you want me to tell him?" "Tell him we're not selling. Tell him to do his worst. And tell him—" Lena stood, moving to stand beside Rowan, taking his hand. "Tell him we're done being afraid." Rowan stared at her like she'd just jumped off a cliff and taken him with her. "You're sure?" "No, I'm terrified, but I'm not letting Morrison win." Lena's hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "My family will survive. They always have. But you and me, if I choose his deal, we're done. And I'd rather fight and lose together than win alone." Something fierce and bright sparked in Rowan's eyes. He pulled her into a kiss that tasted like relief and desperation and promise all at once. When they broke apart, he was already reaching for his phone. "We need a lawyer, a good one, and we need to move fast. We don't have money for—" "I'll mortgage whatever Morrison doesn't take, sell equipment, whatever it takes." He was pacing now, his mind clearly racing. Dutch might know something. He's been around longer than anyone. If Morrison's got skeletons, Dutch will know where they're buried. They drove back to the ranch at dawn, the sky turning pink and gold over land that might not be theirs much longer. But instead of grief, Lena felt something else rising in her chest. Defiance. They were going to fight, and maybe they'd lose, but at least they'd lose standing up. Dutch was already in the barn when they arrived, and one look at their faces told him everything. "You're fighting," he said. "We're fighting," Rowan confirmed. "And we need help. Everything you know about Morrison, every rumor, every shady deal, every corner he's cut over the years." Dutch's weathered face creased into something that might have been a smile. "About damn time. Come on, I've got files." They spent the next 3 hours in Dutch's small office, going through decades of records, newspaper clippings, and handwritten notes. Dutch had been documenting Morrison's business practices for years. Every suspicious land acquisition, every coincidental fire that led to cheap purchases, every family that had been forced to sell under mysterious circumstances. "He's been doing this for 20 years, Dutch explained, spreading papers across the desk. Targets struggling ranches, manufactures a crisis, then swoops in as the savior. But he's smart, never leaves direct evidence." "So how do we prove it?" Lena asked. "We don't. Not in court." Dutch pulled out a folder marked with dates from 3 years ago. "But we don't need court. We need leverage." He opened the folder, and Lena's breath caught. Inside were photos Morrison with a woman who wasn't his wife, documents showing unreported income bank transfers that looked suspiciously like bribes to county officials. "Where did you get this?" Rowan asked. "Been collecting it for years. Figured someday someone would need ammunition against that snake." Dutch met Rowan's eyes. "You use this right and Morrison won't dare go to the commission. Because if he does, this goes public. And his empire comes down with yours." It was blackmail, plain and simple. And normally Rowan would have refused to stoop to that level. But these weren't normal circumstances. "We need to be smart about this," Lena said. "If we threaten him outright, he might call our bluff." "Then we don't threaten, we negotiate." Rowan was already pulling out his phone. "I'm calling him, setting up a meeting, today." Morrison agreed to meet at noon at his office in town, a power move that wasn't lost on any of them. They arrived 15 minutes early, and Lena's stomach was in knots. Everything rested on this. If Morrison didn't take the bait, they were finished. Morrison kept them waiting 20 minutes before his secretary finally led them in. He was sitting behind a massive desk, looking smug and entirely too comfortable. "Mr. and Mrs. Cole, I assume you're here to accept my offer." "We're here to make a counteroffer," Rowan said, dropping Dutch's folder on the desk. Morrison's expression didn't change, but Lena saw his eyes flick to the folder, saw the tiniest tightening around his mouth. "I'm listening." "You drop your investigation. Withdraw your threat to the commission. Leave us alone." Rowan's voice was level-controlled. "In exchange, we don't release any of the information in that folder." "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Then let me clarify." Lena opened the folder, spreading photos and documents across his pristine desk. Unreported income, bribes to county officials, an affair with the mayor's wife. Any one of these would end your reputation. All of them together. She met his eyes. You'd be finished. Morrison's jaw clenched. "This is extortion." "No," Rowan said quietly. "This is survival. You taught us that. You were willing to destroy us to get what you wanted. We're just returning the favor." The silence that followed was suffocating. Morrison stared at the documents like they were vipers, his fingers drumming on the desk. Then slowly he began to laugh. "You've got guts, I'll give you that. Coming in here threatening me in my own office?" He stood, moving to the window. "But you're missing something crucial." "What's that?" Lena asked, her heart sinking. "I don't care about the affair. My wife already knows. The unreported income, I've got lawyers who'll tie that up in court for years. And the bribe allegations." He turned, smiling. "Good luck proving those without witnesses willing to testify, which they won't be." Rowan's expression went cold. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" "Go ahead. Release everything. Destroy my reputation. But while you're doing that, I'll be destroying yours. And unlike you, I have the resources to survive a scandal." Morrison moved back to his desk, gathering the papers like they were trash. "Nice try, but you're going to need more than Dutch's conspiracy theories to stop me." They were losing. Lena could feel it slipping away, could see the triumph in Morrison's eyes, could taste the bitterness of defeat. Then Rowan said something that changed everything. "What if we had Eleanor?" Morrison froze. Actually froze his hand halfway to the folder. "What?" "Eleanor Davies, your business partner's daughter, the woman who was engaged to me 3 years ago." Rowan's voice was steady, but Lena could hear the edge beneath it. "Funny thing, I did some digging after she left. Found out she didn't just steal from me. She stole from you too. That's impossible. Eleanor and I had a business arrangement that she violated, took your investment money and disappeared. You spent months tracking her down, trying to recover your losses. Never did find her, did you?" Morrison's face had gone pale. "How do you know about that?" "Because I know where she is, and I know she kept records, detailed records of every illegal transaction you two were involved in. Insurance, she called it, in case you ever turned on her." It was a bluff, a complete and total bluff. Rowan had no idea where Eleanor was or what she might have kept. But Lena watched Morrison's face and realized something crucial. He believed it. "You're lying," Morrison said, but his voice shook. "Then call my bluff. Go to the commission, file your complaint, and I'll make sure Eleanor's records end up with every prosecutor in the state." Rowan leaned forward. "Or you can walk away. Forget about me, forget about my ranch, and we all move on with our lives. The seconds ticked by like hours. Morrison's hands were clenched into fists, his breathing shallow. Lena could see him calculating weighing options, trying to find a way out. Finally, "This isn't over." "Yeah," Rowan said. "It is." They walked out of Morrison's office with their heads high and their hands linked, and it wasn't until they were in the truck that Lena let herself breathe. "Did you really find Eleanor?" she asked. "No, but he doesn't know that." Rowan started the engine, his hands shaking slightly on the wheel. He's too scared of what she might have to risk calling the bluff. What if he does? Then we're right back where we started. But I don't think he will. Men like Morrison, they're only brave when they have all the power. Take that away, and they crumble. Lena felt a laugh bubbling up in her chest, half relief and half hysteria. "We did it. We actually did it. We did." Rowan pulled her into a kiss that was fierce and grateful and full of everything they'd almost lost. "You were incredible in there. So were you. Where did that Eleanor idea come from?" "Desperation. And the realization that Morrison's been obsessed with controlling this valley for so long, he's made enemies everywhere, including with people who used to work for him." They drove back to the ranch in silence, but this time it wasn't heavy or uncomfortable. It was peaceful, like the calm after a storm. But the storm wasn't quite over yet. They'd just pulled up to the house when Lena's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Is this Lena Hayes?" A woman's voice, sharp and professional. "Yes. Who is this?" "Sarah Chen. I'm with the county commission. We need to speak with you and your husband immediately. There's been an allegation filed this morning regarding your marriage license." Lena's blood ran cold. Morrison. He'd done it anyway, called their bluff and filed his complaint. "We'll be there," she managed. "When?" "Now, if possible. We're convening an emergency session in 1 hour." The line went dead. Lena looked at Rowan and the fear in his eyes matched her own. "He filed," she said. "Then we face it. Together." They called Rowan's lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia, who'd handled the ranch's legal matters for years, and headed back into town with barely enough time to prepare. The commission room was packed. Morrison was there with his own lawyer looking smug. The 6 commission members sat behind a long table, their expressions grave. And in the back, Lena saw faces she recognized from the gala from town people who'd come to watch the spectacle. "Mr. and Mrs. Cole," the chairman began, "we've received serious allegations regarding the legitimacy of your marriage, specifically that it was entered into fraudulently for the purpose of securing water rights approval." "That's a lie," Rowan said, but his voice was too defensive too quick. "Is it?" Morrison's lawyer stood a predator scenting blood. "We have documented evidence that your marriage license was filed 2 days before the commission hearing, that your relationship prior to that was non-existent, that you, Mr. Cole, have a history of failed relationships and admitted trust issues, and that Mrs. Cole was unemployed and financially desperate when this arrangement began." Every word was true, devastating, undeniable. "Furthermore," the lawyer continued, "we have testimony from multiple witnesses that your marriage appears to be one of convenience. Separate bedrooms, minimal public affection until recently, a relationship that looks more like a business arrangement than a genuine marriage." Patricia stood. "With all due respect, none of that proves fraud. People get married quickly for many reasons, and the nature of a private relationship is not something this commission has the authority to judge. But we do have the authority to revoke water rights granted under false pretenses," the chairman said. "Mr. Cole, I'm going to ask you a direct question and I need an honest answer. Was your marriage to Mrs. Hayes entered into primarily to secure commission approval?" The room went silent. Every eye on Rowan. This was it. The moment everything hinged on. Rowan stood slowly. "Yes." Gasps rippled through the room. Lena felt the floor drop out from under her. Morrison's smile was triumphant. "But..." Rowan continued, his voice stronger now. That's not the whole story. I married Lena because I needed to be married to get water rights. That's true. But I also married her because from the moment I met her, she challenged me. Made me question every wall I'd built. Made me want to be better than the broken man I'd convinced myself I was. He turned to look at Lena, and his eyes were bright with unshed tears. Was it fraud at the beginning? Maybe. Probably. But somewhere along the way, it became the most real thing in my life. And if this commission wants to punish me for that, fine. Revoke the water rights. Take whatever you need to take. But don't you dare tell me my marriage isn't legitimate. The chairman exchanged glances with the other commissioners. Mrs. Cole, do you have anything to add? Lena stood on shaking legs. I took money to pretend to be his wife. That's the truth. I was desperate, and he offered me a way out and I took it. But I fell in love with him anyway. And maybe that makes me stupid or naive or whatever else you want to call it. But it doesn't make our marriage fake. Love developed after a fraudulent arrangement is still founded on fraud, Morrison's lawyer said smoothly. Then arrest us. Lena shot back. File charges. Do whatever you need to do. But you're not getting his ranch. You're not winning this. Morrison stood, his face red. This is exactly the kind of disrespect. Sit down, Mr. Morrison. The chairman's voice cut through the room like a blade. We're not finished. Morrison sat looking furious. The chairman turned to her fellow commissioners, and they huddled together whispering. Lena reached for Rowan's hand under the table, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a world that had turned to quicksand. Finally, the chairman spoke. This commission finds that while the timing of your marriage is suspicious, we cannot definitively prove fraudulent intent. Furthermore, the personal nature of your relationship is not within our jurisdiction to judge. She looked at Morrison. The water rights will stand. Morrison shot to his feet. This is outrageous. The evidence clearly shows. The evidence shows two people who got married. The chairman interrupted. Whether they did it for love or business or both is not our concern. The water rights were granted based on marital status, and that status is legally valid. This hearing is concluded. The gavel came down. And just like that, it was over. Lena couldn't breathe, couldn't process what had just happened. They'd won. Somehow, impossibly, they'd won. Morrison stormed out, his lawyer trailing behind, and the room erupted in conversation. But Lena only had eyes for Rowan, who was looking at her like she'd hung the moon. We did it, she whispered. You did it. What you said up there. His voice broke. I don't deserve you. Good thing you've got me anyway. They kissed right there in the commission room, with everyone watching, and Lena didn't care. Let them see. Let them judge. This was real, and nothing Morrison or anyone else said could take that away. Outside, Patricia was waiting with a grim smile. You got lucky. That could have gone very differently. I know, Rowan said. Thank you for everything. Thank Dutch. He's the one who dug up half the dirt on Morrison that made him hesitate to push too hard. She shook both their hands. Go home, celebrate, and maybe next time try falling in love before you get married. We'll keep that in mind, Lena said, laughing despite herself. They drove back to the ranch as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Everything looked the same, the house, the barn, the endless rolling land, but somehow different. Like she was seeing it clearly for the first time. Dutch was waiting on the porch, and the relief on his face when he saw them was palpable. Well, water rights stand. Morrison's threat is neutralized. We're clear. Rowan climbed out of the truck, moving slower now that the adrenaline was fading. We won. Damn right you did. Dutch's voice was gruff, but his eyes were wet. Your grandfather would be proud. They went inside, and Lena made dinner, while Rowan and Dutch talked ranch business, fence repairs, cattle rotations, all the mundane details that made up a life. Normal, peaceful, Real. After Dutch left, Rowan found Lena in the kitchen drying the last of the dishes. "I need to tell you something," he said. "If it's bad news, I don't want to hear it. I've had enough for one lifetime." "It's not bad news. It's—" He paused, searching for words. "I called my bank this afternoon, set up a transfer." "For what?" $5,000. The amount I originally promised you for the arrangement." He pulled out an envelope, setting it on the counter between them. "You earned it. More than earned it. And your family still needs it." Lena stared at the envelope like it might bite her. "Rowan, we're past that. The arrangement is over. We're together now, really together. I know you don't need it, but I'm giving it anyway. Because you came here to save your family and Morrison's stunt meant you couldn't send them anything. This makes it right." He pushed the envelope closer. "Take it. Please. Let me do this one thing." Lena's eyes burned with tears. "You're too good to me." "I'm trying to be good enough for you. Jury's still out on whether I'll manage it." She took the envelope, but instead of opening it, she set it aside and moved into his arms. "Thank you for this, for fighting, for choosing us even when it would have been easier to give up." Easier isn't always better. You taught me that. He kissed the top of her head, and she felt his heartbeat against her cheek, steady, strong, real. "I love you, Lena Hayes." "Lena Cole," she corrected. "If we're doing this, we're doing it right. Real marriage, real vows, real everything." Rowan pulled back to look at her. "Are you proposing to me?" "Maybe. Is it working?" "Yeah," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "It's working." They stood in the kitchen holding each other while the last light faded from the sky, and Lena felt something settle in her chest. Peace. Belonging. Home. The next morning she woke to find Rowan already up, standing at the bedroom window. Their bedroom now she'd moved her things in the night before, erasing the last vestige of their old arrangement. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "The future. For the first time in years, I'm actually looking forward to it, instead of just trying to survive it." He turned to face her, and the smile on his face was genuine. "We should do it right. Get married again. Real ceremony this time. Real vows. We're already married. Legally. But I want to marry you the way I should have from the beginning. Because I love you. Because I choose you. Because I can't imagine my life without you in it." Lena felt her throat tighten. Okay. "Yeah, let's do it. Let's get married. For real this time." They planned it for a month later, small, intimate, just family and the ranch hands who'd become family. Lena's mother and sister made the trip out, and seeing them healthy and happy because of the money she'd sent made everything worth it. Her mother pulled her aside the day before the ceremony. "He's a good man. You can see it in the way he looks at you." "He is, even when he's being impossible. The best ones usually are." Her mother squeezed her hand. "I'm proud of you. For fighting for this. For choosing love, even when it was hard." The ceremony was held at sunset on a hill overlooking the ranch. Nothing fancy, just a minister, some flowers, and the people who mattered. When it came time for vows, Rowan took both her hands in his. "I've spent most of my adult life convinced I was better off alone, that trusting someone meant giving them the power to destroy me. And then you crashed into my life and proved me wrong about everything." His voice was steady, but his eyes were bright. "You showed me that love isn't about control or safety or protecting yourself from pain. It's about choosing someone every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. And I choose you, Lena. Today and every day after." Lena blinked back tears. "When we started this, it was a lie. A convenient arrangement that was supposed to end with us walking away like nothing happened. But you made it impossible to walk away. You made me believe that broken things can heal if you give them time and patience and someone willing to fight for them. I choose you too, Rowan. Not because I need you, but because I want you. Because life with you is better than life without you. And that's the most honest thing I've ever known. They exchanged rings, simple gold bands that meant more than any diamond, and when the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the kiss felt like coming home. The reception was held in the barn transformed with string lights and wildflowers. They danced. Really danced, not the practice steps from the gala, but something free and joyful, and entirely theirs. And when Rowan pulled her close and whispered, "I love you, Mrs. Cole," Lena felt her heart overflow with something she'd spent so long chasing. Happiness. Real, honest, hard-won happiness. Weeks turned into months. The ranch thrived with the water rights secured. Morrison left them alone, too busy dealing with his own scandals after an anonymous source leaked information about his business practices. Lena found work in town, managing accounts for a local co-op, and her family's debts were cleared. Their house saved her sister's medical bills paid in full. But the best part was the life she and Rowan built together. Mornings on the porch with coffee, evenings working side by side, nights falling asleep in each other's arms, arguments that ended in laughter, plans for the future that included children and legacy and growing old on land they'd fought to keep. One evening, almost a year after that first night when he'd grabbed her wrist and whispered, "Pretend to be my wife," they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "Do you ever regret it?" Lena asked. "How we started?" Rowan thought about it. "I regret that I almost lost you by being too scared to fight for what we had. But the rest no, because it brought you here, and I'd live through every mistake again if it meant ending up right here with you." That's a good answer. "I'm getting better at this." "Yeah," Lena agreed, leaning into his side. "You are." They sat in comfortable silence, watching their land turn gold in the fading light. And Lena realized that the lie she'd agreed to the arrangement that was supposed to be